Most of you will have read or heard of Dad's war experiences in the book written by Tom Trumble, Tomorrow We Escape. And I'd like to invite Tom up now.
Thank you very much. My name is Tom Trumble and I'm a military historian. I considered it an incredible honour to be invited to speak here today, just as it was an incredible honour to spend 6 months with Ian reflecting on his war experiences and helping him write his book. My first sight of Ian Busst was on television. He was immaculately attired in suit, blue tie and fedora hat, standing in the shadows of the Shrine of Remembrance, smiling brilliantly. Ian was being interviewed as part of the ABC's coverage of the 2013 Anzac Day March. He wasn't given much time to talk. By the time his minute-long interview was up, I was hooked. Here was an insider's view of combat, imprisonment, escape, adventure, courage and survival set amid history's greatest catastrophe, the Second World War. I had to track this man down. A week after seeing him interviewed, I turned up at Anzac House after having arranged a time to meet with Ian through his son Rod. The receptionist directed me to a room where all the residents had gathered to provide feedback to staff. I knocked on the door and 30 heads turned around to face me. They all looked faintly hopeful, I sensed, that I was a relative or a friend who had decided to make an impromptu visit. I'd barely stated my name and business when I noticed a short man at the back of the room stand up and declare in full voice, "Turn around, you old buggers, this bloke's here to see me." After shaking my hand with a vice-like grip, Ian led me to his room and organised for tea to be delivered. He then commenced to tell me about what must surely rank as one of the most extraordinary individual experiences of the Second World War. The scope of Ian's service is hard to comprehend. His enlistment as a sapper in the 2nd 3rd Field Company and demobilisation 5 years and 2 months later encompassed much of Australia's involvement in World War II. Ian's service was defined by some of the most significant moments of the war and indeed the 20th century. The Battle of Britain, the North Africa Campaign, the Battle of Monte Cassino, the fall of Derna, the disintegration of fascist Italy, the bombing of Munich, the collapse of the Third Reich and finally the liberation of Dachau concentration camp. Ian would come within yards of King George VI of Britain, King Farouk of Egypt and General Sir Archibald Wavell. He even painted a beer commercial on a disused Red Cross hospital in Libya that would later be used as Field Marshal Rommel's headquarters during the siege of Tobruk. All of this was incredibly impressive, but what struck me about Ian was his ability to recall events 70 years in the past with a novelist's eye for detail. The thrum of a transport ship as she drew away from Circular Quay in Sydney, crammed with soldiers bound for Europe. The acrid smell of cordite that lingered in the morning air on London's bombed-out streets after a raid. The violent recall of a breeder machine gun fired from the back of an armoured truck upon an Italian fighter. The way a soldier's cigarette shook in his hand in the hours before battle. The leaden heat of the western desert and the dagger in the stomach agony of dysentery. The bite of the handcuffs during his 28-day solitary confinement in the dreaded Campo 57 during northern Italy's coldest ever winter. The rich saltiness of a Red Cross issue tin of herrings in tomato sauce, the way the sun turned the snowy peaks of the Apennine Mountains into a kaleidoscope of colour during his 3-month escape attempt through Italy, the way a wounded man's eyes misted over moments before he drew his last breath, and finally the way a mother's tears fell down her cheeks when she took hold of her son on a platform on Spencer Street after 5 long years of separation. Ian once said to me that his greatest gift, his ability to recall events as if they only happened the day before, was his greatest curse, because it meant he lived the horror of the war every day of his life. It is a measure of the man's character, I think, that despite all that he endured during and after the war, Ian never lost his smile. In fact, he brought it everywhere he went. It was the smile of a man of relentless optimism. It was the smile of a man who valued gratitude ahead of bitterness, of mateship ahead of hatred. It was the smile of a man of old-fashioned values, of a man who looked you in the eye when he shook your hand, who hated sitting when others were standing and insisted on meeting you at the front door and escorting you all the way back when you were leaving. I was honoured to write Ian's war story, and I will cherish the moment when my son is old enough to read the book. I hope it serves to inform him, my son, that there was once a generation of young men who were forced to cross the threshold into manhood along a rite of passage that was marked with conflict, loss, tragedy, hardship, and extreme violence. My boy will know after reading it that Ian Busst typified all that was special about the greatest generation, because Sapper Ian Busst was more than just a soldier. He was more than just a prisoner of war. He was more than just an escape artist, and he was more than just a survivor. Ian Busst was a decent man and a champion bloke. May light eternal shine upon him.